Podcast. 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 Yeah, welcome to the Racer X Exhaust Podcast. I am Jason Weigandt. This is brought to you by Yoshimura. You already know that Yoshimura-RD.com gets you the inside line on made in the USA exhaust systems for all your bikes, dirt bikes, street bikes, ATVs, and also I want to throw the special shout out to the mini bike line. If you got a pit bike or even a small street bike like the Honda Grom that I was tearing up Daytona Bike Week on, had a Yoshimura exhaust on it. They've got a lot of great stuff for that. But you already know that because they've been sponsoring this podcast for more than 2 years now. We're into year 3. So let's talk about YoshimuraCycling.com. It's all new, starting to roll out some stuff for bicycles. It starts with the Chaleo pedal. Great for mountain bikes, great for BMX. Real men use flat pedals. I am only half of a man. I had clip pedals on my mountain bike. I have free weekends now, in case you haven't noticed. Don't have any races to go to, so I decided to do some real man work in the garage. Left pedal came off of my bike real easy. Got the clip pedal off, got the flat pedal on. The right side pedal, it's so frozen on there that I literally snapped the socket in half. And, of course, that means the socket is still stuck inside the bolt, so now I can do nothing. So now I have a mountain bike with a left side flat pedal and a right side clip pedal. So what do? Do I wear one clip shoe and one? Actually, that would be perfect because you would still have 1 foot free to dab in a rocky section, and you'd still have a little more pedaling power. Maybe I've stumbled upon something. Either way, go to YoshimuraCycling.com. The Chaleo pedal, made in the USA, and cool guys like Hunter and Jet Lawrence use them on their mountain bikes. So what's not to love? Also, this is all brought to you by Racer X. Now, look, I'm not charging you to listen to this podcast. I do not charge you to go to Racer X Online, the website that I help run. I do not charge you to look at Racer X social media. But the magazine, that's our lifeblood. Support motojournalism. Support us and the work we try to do. We won't even charge you much for it. We got a special promotion going right now, $2.99 for 3 issues. So $1 an issue. We'll give it to you in print and digital form. You can read the digital form now right up on the Racer X Online website, so it's really easy. And the magazine will come in your mailbox also, which is cool. It's got good exclusive stuff. Our latest issue, I write about Daytona Bike Week being the end of riding and racing as we know it. Then Davey Coombs writes about what's happened after that, the beginning of the new era of we don't know what the heck is going to happen. A lot of exclusive stuff in there, including Steve Mathis's story on the lost years when Kevin Windham got burned out, disappeared, and then came back better than ever. That's the start of his big long-form Kevin Windham piece in the latest issue. So go to racerxonline.com/subscribe, or look at the top of the site. You'll see something that says The Mag. Click that, and it'll take you to the subscribe page, and you will be good to go. Now, this week's podcast, our subject is Jared Mees. 5-time champion of American flat track, including the 2017 and 2018 seasons. Now, you might say, I don't care about flat track. Or you might say, Jared Mees is a badass. Either way, I don't care. I'm going to pitch this to you whether you like flat track or not. Here's why I wanted to talk to Jared Mees. He is the cerebral assassin of the flat track game. Briar Bauman is the current champion. But Briar Bauman is a happy-go-lucky guy. He shows up at the races. He's pumped to talk to everyone. He just rolls with it. He's always seemingly in a good mood. Meanwhile, you've got Jared Mees, who is analyzing and thinking about racing every second of every day. He eats, sleeps, breathes flat track racing and how to get better. So I wanted to get the perspective of an athlete of how you deal with this time. Do you use this time to get better? Do you use this as an off-season to kind of rest up because you're going to have a crazy schedule potentially in the second half of the year? Mees has been around, he's a veteran, and I feel like essentially the things he's going through and he's thinking are very similar to the motocross and supercross racers, but Mees probably does a better job than a lot of them articulating that because he's been around for a long time, and again, he's very cerebral, very analytical. And we learn a lot about Mees. He's a different guy during the week than he is on the racetrack on the weekend, so I think he's a little misunderstood because he's so intense and so focused on race day. And also, Mees, not only a racer, but he promotes one of the rounds of flat track. That's how into the sport this guy is. This guy is married. His wife was a flat track racer. They got married at a flat track race, He's a promoter of a race, and he's a 5-time champion, and he kind of runs his own team for the most part. The guy does it all. So you're going to get the full perspective of how COVID-19 is affecting a racer and a promoter and everything else in this edition of the podcast. And side note, Mees does train under the guidance of Alden Baker. So you'll hear him referencing Alden. Yes, that's the same Alden we know from Motocross and Supercross. Okay, here's Jared Mees. Dude, this is what I'm asking everyone in every series. It's one thing when you get to the end of a long season and there's an off season and maybe you're tired or maybe you're like pre-programmed to know I'm done, it's time for a break. But how hard was it to just slam on the brakes? Like literally, in this case, like a day before the opener. How weird is this?
Yeah, man, it was one of those things where I was actually out at Alden's, like finishing up the last hurrah week of training. It was a Thursday morning, and was out there just doing my little routine, and Anderson was out there and Cooper were out there, of course, Alden, and they were like, yeah, it doesn't look like Indianapolis is going to fly. We're supposed to hear in any second. And I was just like, man, this isn't good, this isn't good, at all. So I'm sitting there training, and then we had like a little get together thing Thursday late in the evening, and they threw some stuff out there about we're going to keep the fans away, and we're going to do this and we're going to do that, and then we got announced right away as like I was on my way out there from Alden's. I'm like, man. We just got a text that says there's not going to be any fans that are going to be allowed to attend, kind of like what was going to be in Indianapolis.
Yep.
And then it's like, okay, well, we went to bed knowing like this isn't good. We woke up and things were just steadily just declining. Like baseball was getting pushed back, and then this sport was getting pushed back. Yeah. And then this was, Indianapolis by then, Supercross was already canceled for the weekend.
Yep.
So it's like, oh, man, this isn't good, So we pull in our pit area, and we're sitting there, and that's when they put the like Trump made that announcement there at like 3:30 or 4 o'clock, whatever it was on that Friday, about we're in a state of emergency. And as soon as that hit, we got together and we knew we were done. So wow. It was, it's like I sit here right now, here we are 3 or 4 weeks later, and it's like, man, dude, like. I put in so much work, and everybody did. Like, so I'm going to say everybody put in so much work, and it was like the training, all the hard training was behind us. It was time to go, and now the brakes are on. And like right now, it's not hard to say that, man, all that time felt like now it's like, man, was it a waste? You know what I mean? Because now the training has changed. It's backed way, way down because we don't know when we're going to go. And we know when we do go, it's going to be like gangbusters. So we, Alden, of course, that's why we hire the best, is he's got a little bit of a recipe. But it's like, dude, are you telling me, buddy, that I'm going to have to kind of like redo the hard stuff?
Oh,
and
no.
He's like, well, you're gonna have some weeks, leading up to it that I'm going to have to press you again. It's like, oh. Dude, come on. I mean, I get it, but it's like, that was probably, that's probably the most hardest thing. I don't know at this point in time, sitting here right now, if racing Daytona and then having all these months off would have been better. Like Daytona has always been on a Thursday forever with us. And if
you're right.
And if it would have been on a Thursday like it always has been, we would have already had round one in.
That's right.
And so it's like, I sit here now, and it's like, well, yeah, if you would have went in one Daytona, of course it couldn't have been bad. But,
right.
It's like, man, would it have been just as good? I mean, in some ways, yes, because you could say the season started at least, and you could at least, probably fulfill some of the sponsorship obligations on some things with some contracts, but in another way, it's kind of like whenever we start, it's a fresh start for everybody, I guess. And it's going to be interesting.
Well, it was nice of you to say, everyone's in that situation where they came in ready for the opener and they put in all the training. But I do feel like, and I don't know all you guys super well, but I feel like you have you've been around a while, you're serious about this, you take it seriously. I almost would feel like you have more of a planned out plan and schedule than maybe a lot of the other riders. So I would think that would hit you a little harder. Like some guys, the sport's got more serious, but I feel like guys wing it compared to you more so. Would you agree with that? Or for you, it's like messing with the schedule, you really try to dial in all these little details, and now you can't do that. That has to hurt.
Yeah, I mean, it hurts just not knowing, you know what I mean? Like, I'm a very, very persistent, relentless guy. So for me, it's like I want to, I go to bed not having any answers, and I always am like, I'm waking up and I'm going to find answers, and then I go to bed that night and I still don't got no answers. So it's like, oh man, for me, it's like, and you read that, and the last thing you want to do is flick on the news channel because, you get done watching the 30-minute news at 6 o'clock or something like that. You're like, I might not even race next year. So it's like, I mean, I want to know. And, I'm in touch with Michael Locke, the CEO, just a number of reasons. I mean, one of them, of course, my position with the sport, but also I'm also a promoter of one of the 18 rounds of the series, which is Lima. So we've been, creeping up on what are we going to do with that if we have to make a decision and a direction change there. And, so I'm pretty in tune, but, his plan is still the last Saturday in May is the Red Mile. And until we hear otherwise, that's where we're at. So, hopefully we can get all 18 rounds in, and he assures that we will have 18 races in, whether we have 18 different events. That's that's beside the point. I think we're going to get some double headers thrown in there, and I think they're going to do whatever they can, and I think everybody's going to do everything they can to make the series the best it can be with what we have, for cards dealt to us. And that's all we can hope for and stick together and do. I think that's the same in all sporting events, honestly, So whenever we pull the trigger and get to go, I feel like I'll be ready.
How does Flat Track work as far as logistics? If they have to pack in double headers and take away all the breaks, because there's kind of built-in breaks in the schedule. If you got to go like 16 weekends in a row or 14 weekends in a row or do double headers, is that really, really difficult, or it is something that can be pulled off, not that big a change?
It definitely can be pulled off for sure. I mean, it's probably more or less harder on the mechanics and the teams themselves traveling around. The one thing that will help everybody out in the series is if we can do some double headers, because the traveling is what kicks everybody's butt, and I think if we can take some events and do some double headers and, unload the truck one time but race twice and set up, I think that'd be a lot easier than, bang, 18 weekends straight. I'd rather race 9 weekends and cram it in and be double headers than race 18 separate weekends and finish in November or something like that. And, the little gremlins I've heard and kind of what I've, put together a little bit myself, I feel like we're going to have some events that are going to have to be doubled up, or we're going to end up having to go really, really late in the season. And with us, we can only go so late in the season before we have to make sure that we're down in the South to race. And unfortunately, there just isn't really a whole lot of awesome racetracks down in the way south to be able to, bang out a bunch of races at. And, at the end of the day, you can only have so many races in one area before the fans are just like, hey, I seen the race. I'm on the way out. You know what I mean? So, but we'll do whatever we can do. And we raced double headers at like Springfield Mile before, and we've done some stuff like that. So it's not going to be too bad if we have to go that route.
And another thing, and I was talking to Locke and the crew about this like a few days before the race when we thought everything was going to be fine. And he's like, if we get to the point where at that point we thought, they're going to be able to run sporting events without fans, but they'll still be able to hold them. But look, as you mentioned, you're a promoter of one of the races. It's not like Flat Track is getting so much TV money or series sponsor money. We're holding a race without fans doesn't really work in motorcycle racing. The promoters make their money on ticket sales. We don't get $1 billion, from NBC like we did if we had the Super Bowl or the NBA Finals. So as a non-fans thing, is that even really much of an option, at least from your perspective in the race you run?
No, it's not. I mean, if they came to me and said, hey, we can run Lima this weekend, but we can run it with no fans, I would literally turn my hand, I'd turn my hand upside down and say, well, you're going to have to write the check then, because I'm not going to stroke the check for it. I mean,
Sure.
I know what it costs to run those events, and you're right. The only things that pay for the event as an outside promoter like myself are number one, the fans, and number two, the sponsors, and the sponsors are supporting it because the fans are there.
That's right.
So and of course, like T-shirt sales play along with it, and food and beer, but if you don't have no fans to sell beer to, like I said, back to the old deal, the top of the tree here is the fans. They eat the food, they drink the beer, they buy the T-shirts, and they're there to purchase things off the sponsors and the vendors that you have at your event. So obviously, no fans, for me, it just wouldn't work. Some sporting events are very high, top heavy right now on the television packages. And man, if you could, if we could actually race, and we could be only one of the races on the circuit right now racing, we'd have some kick-ass numbers. But that's not the case. We can't do that. So for me, I can't run, the Lima half mile without any fans. It would make no sense for me to do it, and I would lose. I would lose out very, very, very big. But the series that are connected with the television rights and the packages and stuff, they might be able to move things around to where it works for them. But myself, I can't do that.
Yeah, I just like your perspective on that, because we hear people are going to hear, oh, the NBA could do stuff without fans, and think, oh, sweet, that means racing is coming back. But our model is not the same, so you can't really look at it that way as it is for us. So for you on the other business side, as being a racer, I haven't been able to get a good read on this from anybody. Like, do you just keep getting paid, or are you under pressure to get out there? Does anyone really know how to manage this not racing thing, because no one's ever not raced? How does that part work, the business of being a racer without races right now?
I mean, for me right now, fortunately, I'm still under contract, and until I hear otherwise, we continue. The only thing that happened with myself so far is that I think things are going to be getting delayed, and I respect that 100%. Mm-hmm. I understand, there's nothing being done. People aren't able to work. The company is, laying some people off or shutting people down. And, and when I say company, I mean companies, not
your sponsors, but everybody. Yeah.
Everybody. Yeah. And I have multiple sponsors that contribute to my program, Indian being, of course, the biggest. And then, we have Progressive Insurance, and we have S&S and Bell Helmets and Alpine Stars. So everyone is, waiting the storm out in a way. And some people are being more proactive than others as far as laying people off and moving things around and stuff. But, all I basically am seeing and hearing so far is, things are on hold, and, the monthly checks that were coming in from some sponsors have been on hold, and they have every intentions to, if we can run the 18 race series and get back to it, then they'll relieve the funds. But it's all good. I look at my sponsors and supporters as family in ways. I've been with some of them for a very long time, and I understand the crisis that we're all in, and it's just, hey, you just got to work through it. However you can make it work with them, and hopefully they stay by your side and you stay by their side, and you can go after it and come out of it like a family is how I'm kind of approaching it, hoping for the best.
All right, that's enough on this coronavirus thing. Let's introduce these moto fans who maybe haven't been following AFT until more recently to where we are. The goal this year was for you to try to get your title back. You won a couple years in a row, and then several years even before that. If we had gone racing, talk about your plan coming into the year and what you're going to try to do to get that championship back this year.
Yeah, the plan was last year. We just started behind the 8 ball, right away out of Daytona. And the guy that won the championship and ended up being the biggest thorn in my side, he had, he went out there and won Daytona, and I had a goose egg. And it just seemed like every time I got within a little bit of a striking distance, something would happen. Buffalo Chip, he kind of had a goose egg and I had a third, and we kind of got into a 10 or 12 point deal. And then I go out there and, we low side and fall down, and, just something happened, whether it was bike or myself. And I will, towards the end there, I don't think I hit the panic button, but I just felt like there was races where I didn't ride and race to the best of my ability, and there were some races out there, some half-mile races mainly, that I just really felt like I left a lot on the table, and I just knew that I was better than that. I mean, like the slippery groove clay half miles has always been like my forte, my specialty. Mm-hmm. And there was times where we would go there, race, come home, or leave, and it was like, dude, third or fourth or a fifth or off the podium and off the pace, and that just never has been, where we were at. And I just, I think that we need to clean a couple of those little races up, and we would be fine. I mean, at the end of the day, we lost by 6 points. I know the last race of the year at Meadowlands was kind of like a throwaway for Bauman. I don't think he really even cared to be there that day, honestly, and I don't blame him. He just won the championship and just, fulfilled a lifelong dream. And I was there once where it was like, dude, I could care less what happens from this point on. I just did it. Mm-hmm. So I don't really look at it like, hey, I only lost by 6 points. But in theory, I lost by 6 points, and I had a lot of goose eggs. We won, a lot more races than anybody else, and I just feel like we need to clean up some of the spots that we have always been really, really strong at, and cross those T's and dot those I's again. And I really feel like we would be 100% back in the hunt, because we've got some tracks where I feel like we're the strongest guy unloading out of the truck. And, those days there, I need to make sure I capitalize on. And then the other days that, I felt like we were a little off, I know that there's more left in us.
So is that stuff that you just got to do? Is that literally like executing it in the race or on the race weekend? Or are there things you could do in the off season to try to strengthen up those parts and get back to where you wanted to be?
No, I mean, not really a whole lot there in the off season to really do. I mean, mm-hmm. I've always felt like my fitness has been, one of the best on the circuit, if not the best on the circuit. And yes, I kind of got really in tune with Alden this year for 2019 or for 2020 from 2019. I've always, people don't really understand, but I've always had like Alden's help a little bit in a way. Mm-hmm. But this year going into 2020 was 100% like way more involvement with him, way more, speaking to him on a daily basis, whether it be text or calling or whatever, and him really dissecting the program. And I never had like his hands on as much as I ever did until this coming year. And, he focused on a few things that I think he thought that we could gain. And I think we gained him. I mean, I never really asked him, honestly, but I think so. I felt a lot better. I was a lot lighter than I ever been. I never thought I could lose, 7 pounds off of what I was doing, because I was like, hey, man, I'm already pretty lean, whatever. And boom, he sucked 7 pounds out of me, and I felt great. And so that feeling on the bike was better than it's ever been. Would that transpire into, cleaning up some of those spots that I was talking about on the flat track season? Yeah, maybe. I mean, definitely focus was good. Confidence was high going in, so that always plays a big toll. I actually did lots of training with Bauman through the winter, whether we were motocrossing during the week or we were at Alden's doing some riding. So I definitely, seen a lot of them, so that was all good. But I just think to clean up some of those spots is just trying to get a little bit more comfortable with the bike and the setup at those places. Just because we went to that track 2 years ago or 3 years ago and I won it by a straightaway and this is the setup, doesn't mean that other people out there aren't working hard to try to, bring it in from, a straightaway behind to now trying to beat me. And that's where it came to was, hey, just because we won with this setup doesn't mean that it's good now for the next 10 years. People are evolving. People are getting better. And we got to make sure that we get better as well. And I think that, we may have missed some of the setups and some of the things to try to get better and just was like, hey, this is what worked for 2 years in a row and we won. We're not changing it. It's like, well, outside looking in, somebody else came up with something better, and we've got to either find out what that is and then get better or fix what we got. And maybe it wasn't the bike. Maybe it was just between the ears. That's That's something I'm willing to accept too. But regardless of what it is, it was just there was some places where I didn't feel comfortable going any faster than I could, and I'm really good at. I feel like I'm really good at going. All right, this is what my struggle was. This is what my problem, and this is how you correct it. Like I'm pretty good being in tune with the setup of the bike, and in tune with like my suspension guy Jimmy Wood, and then of course Kenny Tolbert. Like, hey, dude. This is what the problem was. Right here in the range is where I was getting, killed at, or this is where it was lighting off and spinning at. I think we need to go with this exhaust pipe setup, or, move this around. So I kind of dissected every race of like, maybe we missed it here, maybe we missed it there. But, going into 2020, I felt like we would try a few different things and see if they were better. And we did some testing earlier on in 2020, like pretty much like 2 weeks prior to Daytona, week of Daytona, and some of the things that we did try, we did see some gains in quite a bit. So I was pretty excited to get the season going, and I felt like we had a pretty good setting base plan.
So, yeah, take me through the evolution here. You got on that Indian, and then for the beginning of the first year, it was a battle between you and Brian Smith. Then you really took over, and then the next year, the beginning of the year, you were just dominating. How has it evolved from there? Did you start to sense, man, these other guys are figuring this bike out? And more guys got on the Indian also. Have you sensed a change basically from the beginning of what would have been the beginning of 2018 through the 2019 season? Did it start to evolve as these other guys started to pick it up?
Yeah, for sure. Like in 2017, Brian I actually came out and won the very first two, and then Brian came out and won like the next four. And I was just like, oh, man. And then all of a sudden we just kind of started putting it together, and we just found something that was basic and worked, and we brought it pretty much everywhere, and it worked out good that year, I think, because we started doing good and then doing good and doing good. And I think what happened was Brian and the Howerton team started changing and trying stuff and was going down the wrong way, in my opinion, outside looking in, because they kind of like got worse and they got worse and they got worse, and then they won some races there at the end. And then 2018 came around, and we just started right out of the box solid, and Brian fell down in Texas and got hurt. And then, Brad, he had his accident in mid-July there, which is pretty much halfway through the season. And then from there, it was just, they were my two biggest threats. And by that time, the privateers were starting to invest and get on the Indians in 2018. And they first got on them, they were just kind of like riding them how they were, and then they started kind of fine-tuning them. And I kind of sensed that, towards the end of 2018's year, people started kind of figuring things out and moving things around, and, it got a little bit more competitive. And, I knew going into 2019 that Bauman was going to be very tough, because at the end of 18, he was strong. And I also knew that, there was going to be more guys going into 2019 that were going to be stronger. Now they have a full off season to kind of fine tune the bike to them and make some changes and make some adjustments and stumble upon something. A lot of times when you gain in the sport, you stumble upon something mainly, you know what I mean? And it works for you. So, I knew it was going to be, it continued to get tougher, and it's going to continue to get tougher year after year.
With flat track, when you had that year run there where you were just, even the miles, dude, you were dominating, which isn't even supposed to happen in the miles. But in normal circumstances, like we're kind of back to now, how small can the change be that results in you having a good and a bad night?
Well, it depends on what the change is on the motorcycle or what the change is on with yourself. Yeah. But, it can, sometimes the smallest thing equals out to be the biggest. And sometimes, the biggest in a failure and the biggest in a gain, you know what I mean? Yep. Like one tooth on the rear sprocket. So like going from a 47 to a 48 or vice versa. In flat track, like gearing within one tooth can make or break your whole race.
Wow.
Like just one tooth on the rear sprocket literally could be the difference of finishing first that night or fourth that night.
Wow.
One tooth. And I would bet you, and what people don't realize in flat track is probably gearing the day of the race is probably the number one thing that is changed daily. Like I don't, Springfield Mile, we're pretty set. Like we go there, we run our same gearing within, whatever. But I'm telling you, like even at Springfield, it is not. I've been there now. I've probably raced it 2 times since 2017 each time. So 17, 18, 19. So, six different races already at the Springfield Mile. And I guarantee you, when I go to Springfield this year, I probably will change my gearing one way or the other. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So what I'm saying is, it's just like, man, like gearing is such a big thing with flat track, and that's probably the number one thing that everybody changes and everybody fine tunes, and that is probably one of the biggest things that could make you or break you that day. Like a full turn in the suspension would not affect you as much as taking the tooth on or off. Like in motocross, 2 clicks. Them guys are supposedly able to like feel it. Like, oh my gosh, we should have went 2 clicks on the compression, dude, and we would have been dialed.
Yeah.
Dude, like suspension's big in flat track. Like we run Olin's and it's very big, but you could be out there leading the race, checked out, gone, and come up during a red flag and put 2 clicks of compression in or out of my rear shock, and the chances of me going backwards are not likely. You know what I mean? Like you would, but if we're doing that red flag, you were to put a tooth on it or take a tooth off.
Yep.
You could take me from being a checked out straightaway gone to running 4th place.
Now, what affects that? Is it literally, because you're saying same bike, same track, every year you might change a tooth, which changes everything. Is it literally like if it's a little slicker or a little tackier or the weather's a little different? Is that what can lead to that one? Because you can't just set it and forget it. You've got to figure it out each time. So why would it change?
So many variables, but as you said, like the track could be faster that day. It could be slower. It could be drier. We could have had 7 inches of rain last year prior to the event, and then this year we had 14 inches of rain. And they may have used a different calcium chloride. They may have mixed the calcium chloride, which is a chemical that for dust control in the track. Like those things make the difference. We might have ran right around the bottom before last year. We might run way at the top now this year because the moisture's up there. They had the World Outlaw Sprint cars this time a week before our event, and last year they didn't have any sprint cars at all, so the track stayed open and they got more moisture in it. Like those are all big variables that play into why we would change. And like when I say we, Springfield, we might go there and change 1 tooth bigger or smaller. It's not like a big difference, but like half mile to half mile, dude, we might run 3 different half miles, and we might be difference of 3 different teeth or 4 different teeth between every racetrack. And at the end of the day, the amount of the distance on the track, from start to finish could be the same. It's just the shape of it makes you have to run different gearing. Like one's got longer straightaways, tighter corners, so you rev out a lot further. One, you carry way more momentum, and you got way more speed. So, like, that's a big variable.
Okay, this is interesting to know because, what it shows is, especially in flat track, that, at the end of the night, you want to figure out who won, who lost, who's got momentum, who has confidence, who wants it, blah, blah, blah. But a lot of it is just it comes down to everyone's gambling a bit. You go to the line, and you think the 48's the winner tonight, and the other guy's got a 47, and that makes all the difference. A lot of it is having all your knowledge to try to make the most educated guess, but whoever guesses right often is going to be the winner.
Yeah, I mean, you're literally, okay, I come in after my heat race and I'm fast, and the track's going to speed up or get faster for the main event. So if you're already on that bubble of like, okay, I'm already pretty tight with my gearing, I should take a tooth off, but is the track going to get slower? Is it going to get faster? I mean, as far as other guys, especially everybody that's on an Indian, people are somewhat close with gearing, but if you change the exhaust pipes, like Kenny Tolbert's got 900 different exhaust pipes, you could change the exhaust pipes and that can affect gearing huge, whether you run like a 2-1 or like a dual pipe, or, if you run different size diameter headers, like that all plays a really big difference in what kind of gearing you are, because, gearing is literally obviously equals into RPM, but you change exhaust pipes and you move the power curve around, it changes the RPM of the power curve as well, throughout the range. So gearing is like so critical with flat track, and it's probably one of the main things that people don't understand and don't know out there in the real world. Is like, dude, these guys got, we've got 3 of every sprocket, from a 36 tooth rear sprocket all the way up to a 55. We've got 3 of every sprocket, just because, we've got backup bikes, and then we have a backup wheel and stuff. So, you want your backup bike to be really, really close to your main A bike, just in case you got to jump on it. So a 48 is the rear sprocket that's ideal for that day. You want to have a 48 on your backup bike, a 48 on your main bike, and then you want to have a spare 48 on a wheel, just in case you need to throw it on real quick. So, sprocket trees, like if you go racing and you forgot your gear stack, you might as well just call somebody and make sure you can borrow somebody's, or you might as well just turn around and go get it, or just turn around and go home, because you are probably going to be in a world of hurt, going to that racetrack if you forgot. Forgetting a gear stack is like a rider forgetting his boots.
It's critical.
It's critical, dude. I'd rather forget the starter to start the bike than forget my gear stack. Put it that way.
When it gets this technical, okay, there are some guys that they just want to drive or they just want to ride and they leave it to the crew. It sounds to me like you enjoy this part. You don't want to just say the bike's doing this, figure it out. It sounds to me like you enjoy actually knowing what the parts do and making suggestions, and that whole side of the game is something you actually like.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've got a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge of, racing, and know what things do. And I've been blessed to work with some really good guys, and especially, in my opinion, the best, which is Kenny Tolbert. So, and I think what really helped me out a lot was, back in the day when we used to do our own 450 singles.
Mm-hmm.
We used to race the 450 singles and the twins to determine the Grand National Championship, right? Yep. So, from 2009 until 2016, I worked on my own 450s, and I was riding Hondas back then. So I worked on my own 450 Hondas. I mean, I assembled the engines, I decreed the cams, I cut the pistons, I dynoed them, I changed and made my own pipes. I was so hands-on with them, and got to be so knowledgeable with cam lift and compression, and too much compression, what was the downside and the upside. And, I had some really good guys help me, and I bounced a lot of questions off of guys. But I was doing them all myself, and I learned a ton with it. And I think I was able to bring a lot of that knowledge of setup and understanding pipes, and looking, I could look at a pipe and be like, this is probably going to make power here and lose it up here, and vice versa. So I think that, Tolbert might go, dude, that's what his biggest problem is. He feels like he knows too much. But I think it does help in a lot of ways of trying to fine tune things. And if I'm searching for something on the racetrack, I feel like I can gain it and know what I need by pointing out, my struggles with it. So yeah, I've been very in touch with the setup of the bikes for a long time. And I think a lot of that knowledge and expertise came from doing my own 450 program way back in the day. And it was stressful, and I had a lot of fun doing it. And I had some really good running 450s back in the day. So I'm glad I don't have to work on that shit no more, man, because it was fun, but it was stressful too.
Hey, Weech here. Real quick interruption of the interview with Jared Mees. Just plug in Yoshimura. Yoshimura-rd.com and YoshimuraCycling.com. You can get the Chileo pedal made in the USA, or your exhaust system made in the USA, and also RacerX. Go to RacerXOnline.com. You'll see some new features on the website. Those are actually standard things we have in the magazine every month, but now you can read them on the site. But you've got to subscribe, but we make it cheap. $2.99 for 3 issues, and then you can access all those features we're putting on the site. So go to RacerXOnline.com/subscribe for that. Now let's go back to Jared Mees.
Bro, I'm not used to talking to guys that win titles that know how to degree cams and are dynoing their own bikes and building their own exhaust pipes. That's pretty heavy stuff for a racer.
Yeah, I got into it. My buddy Craig Pickett back at home, who's my hero, just ultimate hero, got me into teaching me how to work on the stuff. And when I switched teams back in the day with tuners, the one tuner that I went to, Brent Armbruster, was like, man, I don't really care to do the 450s. If you feel comfortable doing them, I'll help you with them, and I'll, be there at the track and stuff. But if you want to prep them doing their, and I was just like, dude, I know I'm too good right now to where I feel like if I gave them to somebody, I would go to bed every night being like, dude, I would do a better job than that person.
Right.
And it would just eat me alive. Like whether the person was better than me or not, I'd be like, I was just so OCD with them. Like, did you go to the dyno? Did you check, this cam timing versus that and this and that? Where like the twin stuff is like is a little bit over my head. Well, back in the day, the XR 750 stuff we were running was like way over my head. Like the average mechanic couldn't put those together. They were like that involved. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Like you had to have a mill machine. You had to have a lathe. You had to have a press to press the crank. Like you had to have thousands of dollars in tooling to just put one together, and the time. And they were just way over my head. Now the Indian, like the little bit I have worked on it a little bit because I do have a personal bike. They're a very simple, basic engine. I mean, it's something I don't want to deal with because I've been away from it for so long. But they're a lot more basic of an engine and a lot more modern of an engine today than the old XR. Dude, the old XR 750. You'd pull the first off, they came in a million pieces. Like you literally got a box that was 4 foot by 4 foot, and you open the box up, and everything was in individual little tiny pieces and parts, like everything. And you would literally take the brand new rod out of the box, and you would have to send it off to get straightened, or if you were Kenny Tolbert, you straighten it yourself because it came brand new. It was bent. Brand new, bent.
Well, this is what? I mean, what is this, a 1970 motorcycle or so? Really?
Yeah. I mean, you would take... Dude, there was a couple times you take some pieces out there. It literally looked like somebody like whittled them out on their bandsaw, and there were still like sanding mark edges and saw mark edges on some of the parts, and they just pack them up, wrap them up, and send them to you. It's like the cases wouldn't line up. You'd have to set the cases up on a mill and mill where the oil pump would go because it wasn't flat. And if you just stuck the oil pump in there and fired it up, after 50 hours, it would leak and leak and leak and leak and leak because you didn't mill where the oil pump went, and it leaked. They were a craft, dude. They were something else, and I'm glad that we're way past those things by now.
Well, okay, so the whole sport has several things happen all at the same time. The Indian factory ride comes in for you and a couple others. Sport gets on TV. Locke, and I'll throw a shout out to Gene Crouch also. They worked really hard to try to build the profile, and they took some risks. Either way, what you can't argue is the sport's bigger than it was going back, say, 2015. But you live flat track like no one else. You're a racer, you're a promoter, your wife was a racer. What do you think when you see this evolution? Are you like, yes, this is my sport and people are seeing it now? Or is it so different you can't compare? Like, what do you think of when you see how much growth we've had for a couple of years?
I mean, it's awesome. Like when I became 16 years old and turned a professional and got involved with the sport, like everybody looked back at the Camel Pro days with, Parker and Carr and Bubba Shobert and Ricky. And they were like, those were the heydays. Those were the greatest days to come through flat track racing. You go out and you win the Camel Pro Challenge and you win 10 grand just for winning the Camel Pro Challenge, which, 10 grand today is not a whole lot of money, but back then just think of how much that was. And they had I think they had like 5 or 6 of those events. So a guy could go out there and make 60 grand just by winning in 5 laps, 5-lap little dash for cashes. They made pay 10 grand. So those were like the heyday, right? And then we went through, a period of time where we were down around like 12 to 14 events. And, it was kind of a struggle. Everybody was on the same brand, which was the XR 750. And Harley didn't even really need to have any support in the sport because there wasn't anything really, there was no ROI really for Harley. I think if it wasn't for like Willie G. Davidson loving the sport of flat track, I think the corporate guys at Harley probably would have said, hey, let's go a different direction here because they're put in place to make sure the company puts money in the right spot and makes money, and that's that. And I could tell you right now that flat track, in the late 2000s, probably wasn't a spot where they really seen any ROI. I could be wrong, but is what it was. But anyway, since I really think the turn was when Indian Motorcycle made their purpose-built flat track engine, and it was just such a big buzz of, man, this is crazy. Like, this is showing what one manufacturer's commitment is to something, and they're coming in with, their guns loaded, and the NBC Sports things turned around. It was kind of the rebirth of flat track in 2017, and it was twins on everything. That was another thing too, is back in the day, you were like, watch Jay Springsteen jump his XR 750 at Peoria TT and the Astrodome and all that stuff, and it was like, yeah, dude, that we'll never do that. That's way past us. We're doing these 450s now. That's what we're doing. That's what I was building. And yeah, that's whatever. Men were men. Okay, whatever. Well, then all of a sudden, it was like, hey, we're gonna run twins everywhere. And it's like, what do you mean? That doesn't make any sense. And then it's like, well, yeah, it does. You talk to Indian Motorcycle, they're like, we don't want to get involved and have our riders jump on Hondas or Kawasaki's and Yamahas, and then we pay them to ride an Indian. Like, that doesn't make any sense. And you're like, yeah, you're right. For a while there, it made sense, like Yamaha, Suzuki, and Honda and Kawasaki to get involved, and they run a twin and they run a single, and they both make both. But then you had these companies like, BMW and Ducati and Harley, of course, Indian, that don't make 450 singles and don't make little bikes like that. So it didn't make any sense for them to invest and be involved in our sport. And those were the companies that actually probably would invest in our sport if we ran twins everywhere, because that's what they sell on a weekly basis, is the cruisers and the twins, and our demographic of fan base is the BMW and Indian and Harley Davidson and Ducati customers. So it only made sense at the end of the day that we race the same brand, one brand everywhere. And I think that was a strong move, and that was a good move. And, I think I'm very fortunate to say that I think in 17, 18, and 19 were actually some of the best years for flat track as far as exposure. And the riders were making, better livings than they ever have for a long time. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to compare, because back then in the 90s with Bubba and Ricky Graham and all that, there was only so much racing out there, you know what I mean? And flat track was very popular because it didn't have to battle against 50 other forms of racing,
right,
and different things, where today we're having to battle against Supercross and Motocross and MotoGP and Moto America and World Superbike and British Superbike, and there's just so much different forms of racing and racing series today than what they were back then, when we would call like the heyday. So it's very hard and very difficult to put it in perspective as where we were at back then to where we are now. But I'm pretty confident that, the last 3 years of flat track was, some of the best that flat track's ever seen as far as exposure and a monetary level goes for riders and things like that.
So now this is big time factory racing, and if you win, you make a lot of money. Like, if you go back 6 or 7 years ago, I mean, were you even looking at it as a business, or was it like, no, man, I'm a professional racer, and I'm just trying to win, and that's all I'm focused on. And if the business thing, if we're making money, if we're not, if the sport's growing, if we're not, I'm just focused on winning races and titles. Were you even thinking of it as a business as much back then?
Myself, yes, I was.
Okay.
And I think where one of my big strengths have always been is I've always ran my racing program as a business, and I was always able to put a solid program together to where I felt like my the income I was able to drum up year after year was above most that were out there, but it was a lot of work, and I ran it pretty steady like I do now. It was a business for me to go out there, but I think today there is a lot more riders and a lot more teams running it more like a business, more like they should have always ran it. And I understand, they're running it now more like a business because it makes business sense to do it that way. Back then, it was just, hey, let's go and race and have fun. And, the guys that took it serious and ran it like a business like myself succeeded. And the guys that, just went there and had fun, they just went there and had fun. But those guys now that are, had fun, they're running it like a business and it's making it more tough.
Yeah. But overall, you're just got to be proud. I mean, this is your sport in so many ways. It's a sport you love. And now you're seeing everybody else, giving it some love also.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, it's, it's been good to see, people get serious about it. I think like last year it was kind of funny. Last year there was so many riders that came to Daytona, and you could see they put the effort in. A lot of them lost weight. A lot of them came to the series as professionals, and I think that's one thing the series has been really striving forward, is that they really want to try to wean out the weekend warriors and the guys that like to do this and say it's a hobby and it's fun. Like, we all want to go there and have fun, but I think they really want people involved that are like running it as a business and wanting to be professionals and take it professionally. And I think that's what we have seen slowly progress throughout the last 3 years.
So how does it work? I know when the sport's smaller, it's kind of becomes like there's a lot of camaraderie, and it's maybe not as competitive because people aren't necessarily, it's like you said, it's like a hobby. It's like a weekend warrior thing, and whatever happens on the track happens. Has the relationships of riders changed as it gets more serious? Because that's usually unfortunate, like the side effect where it gets less fun. Have your relationships changed? Have you noticed relationships with other riders and each other change as it gets more serious?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely no secret that, like back in the day, like me and Brian, we were going at it. And like hell, I had Brian Smith in my wedding at Springfield Mile back in 2013. And we would ride and go do all these outlaw races and stuff like that together. And, we were big time buddies. And then, we had that stretch there, like from, I don't know, was it 14, 15-ish, until about, I actually would say, all the way into like 19, 18, 19, where, I'm not going to say hate because it's such a strong word, but it was just like, I wanted to beat him and he wanted to beat me, and he was sick and tired of hearing the name Jared Mees, and I was sick and tired of hearing the name Brian Smith. And, we when we heard of each other's name or seen one another, we probably gritted our teeth. And but we always had tons of respect for one another. Like, we never like brought it into a bad relationship or anything. But I could tell, like, we didn't talk on the phone hardly at all. And, when we seen each other, it was like, hey, what's up? And it was what it was. But we always, handled it professionally in my book. And then, we've actually gotten pretty tight here since, I would say, like I said, last year in 2019, we were pretty tight. And, we've been pretty tight through the winter and stuff like that. And back to how it, was back in the early 2000s, which is really cool. And then, when that door opened back up, the Bauman and Mees door kind of started to close, because here's a guy, Briar Bauman, that, I had him at my house and we were training. And in 2018, like, him and Shayna came down and lived at my house down here in Florida, and we trained every day and went riding, and we were best buddies, and we used to talk every day. And dude, I put him in touch with, like, my accountant and my financial advisor, and, spoke to him about how to word things with sponsors, and got him in touch with, like, Bell helmets, and just, like, wow. Dude, I looked after him like he was my little brother, what I mean? Like, hey, I'll help you. I got that guy's connection here. Call this guy, call him, or I'll call him for you and tell him you're calling him, and leathers. I mean, I think I got him a leather deal back in like 18 from Speed and Strength or something like that. Like, I was like, hey, I'll look after you. And, when it came time for him to get in contact with, like, Indian, like, I was telling Gary Gray from Indian, like, dude, he's going to be the guy, man. Like, he's going to be good. And he was, I mean, it was obvious too. Like, I'm not saying it was me by any means, but he was, I'm like, dude, he's going to be the guy. I'm telling you, man, he's going to be good. He's got great work ethic. He's a good dude, blah, blah, blah. And, yeah. And then, and then leading into 2019 at the beginning, it just, just got competitive and was what it was.
Yep. Yeah, that's what he said. Yeah, he said the same thing. The relationship's just changed. Is that just, if you're going for the same prize, is that just kind of what happens?
I guess. I mean, I think the deal is, honestly, with people, is it's just everybody's different. And, Briar never really was in the situation that he was in. And, I don't know if he had other people around him trying to, like, coax him to handle things this way. And, some people are different. Like, I was talking to Jake Johnson about it, and, like, me and Jake raced each other, through the amateur ranks. And when we went and battled for the championship in 2010 and 11, I think it was 10 and 11. heck, there was a couple races where we like drove from Michigan to California in the same race rig and unloaded and was sitting side by side with one another,
I see.
And we loaded back up, and whether he beat me or I beat him, it was just like, yeah, good, whatever, I mean, at the very, very end of those years when we were actually like getting down to the nitty gritty, I mean, it was like just competitive, like, you're the guy that's in my way of winning this thing, and screw you, you know what I mean? Like, it got that kind of way, but it never got to the where it was like, no, if I would have called the guy, he'd have called me right back. You know what I mean? Or, today it's not quite that simple. So it is what it is, man. It's all good. I feel like once the relationships like that have been built, they're always going to be there. It's just going to take some time to get them back. And a perfect example so far is like myself and Brian, like,
yep.
We're buddies, and I think at the end of the day, like, if he ever needed something during that time, like, he knew he could call me. And that's the same thing with Briar. It was like, dude, if he called me tomorrow and was like, dude, struggling or whatever, or who do I talk to, or the financial guy you'd set me up with, he said this and that, and have you ever done that? Like, it'd be like, yeah, dude, like, no problem at all. Like, fucking, just love him to death,
What I can sense here is like there's Jared Mees on race day, super focused and trying to get the gearing right and all these things. But then all the other days when you're not on race day, it's a little different. Like you are willing to help other people. On the day of the race you want to win and you're there to help yourself. But beyond that, there's like a whole other side that maybe people don't see where you're a lot different than that.
Yeah, I mean, I hear that quite a bit, actually. Heck, I think you did an interview with Briar or Shayna one time, and you asked that question, and they answered it spot on.
Yeah, that's where I get it from. Like I hear that from people. They're like, "No, Jared during the week's totally different. He's awesome." Yeah, yep.
Yeah. When I get there to the races, dude, it's like I don't have, and this is bad. Like I don't want people to take this the wrong way, but it's like, man, I don't have time for anybody. You know what I mean? Like,
sure,
that seems so selfish, and it is. But it's like, dude, I don't have time for anybody. I'm here to win. Mm-hmm. I'm here to put points on the board, represent my sponsors. Like, I'm here because I worked so hard through the off season. I worked so hard during the week, and I'm here to prove that all my hard work is going to pay off right now. And there's nobody standing in my way to like mess my focus up. And that's like, and like Bauman's the opposite. Like, he's like, yeah, I go there to see my friends and it's cool and it's laid back and da-da-da-da. It's like, dude, I don't care if I lose friends going to the racetrack. You know what I mean? Like, I don't care. Like, it's about winning. That's all it's about. That's it. And when I get away from the racetrack, yeah, I feel like I got the biggest sense of humor, and I'll bust on anybody that wants to bust on me, and I'll bust on them back. And, we joke around, and my mechanic, he's probably got the biggest sense of humor out of anybody in the paddock. But when we come to racing, it's all business, man. There is nothing there besides me winning. And that's all that matters that day, is making sure that I win. And it's selfish as heck. I get it, man. But that's me. Like, I don't want anybody interrupting me. Sometimes, my family have been like, they just know it. Like, all right, Garrett, Mees on race day, don't bother them. Like, they don't even like want to even come down to the pit area. They're just like, hey, we're just going to stay up in the pits. We'll see you afterwards. And if it's a bad day and you don't get on the podium, yeah, it's probably not a good time to go up to them. It's like,
right.
I know it's like, it's just, man, like, I hate losing more than I like winning. You know what I mean? Like, that's just the deal.
I think that's cool. So, yeah, you're saying by Monday or Tuesday, you'll hang out with your family, no problem. It's just...
Oh, dude, yeah. I mean, a couple hours afterwards, once we get loaded up and I put it behind me, if we win, then it's great. If we lose, I'm pretty good at shaking it off. It just takes me a couple hours to, like, dissect. All right, I messed up here. This is what I should have done. This is what I'm going to do next time. And, it, like, eats me up so bad that I just want to go out there and redo the race right now because I know that I'm better than that. But... me during the week, it's like, dude, this guy is like on me. You know what I mean? Like, he needs to relax. It's usually quite like that. So it's definitely two different people. There's the at-home Jared Mees, and there's the racetrack Jared Mees. And man, I didn't really start getting that until, like 2012, like 13, 12, 11, 12, 13. I just started really like not caring about anybody but me and the team that day. Like, and not saying like I didn't care any about like people out on the racetrack and I'd take them out and knock them down. Like, I'm not saying that, but it just didn't like it, you know, I would have a conversation with somebody like my suspension guy. He's so hilarious. If you ever interviewed him, he'd be like, dude, talking to him is like, he could tell right away when we start talking if I'm even focused in on the conversation to even finish it. Like, if it's not about racing and setup and moving forward that day, it's not even worth talking to him about it. Whether it's something to do with like his kid or my kid, and or busting on somebody, or dude, check this out. So I was over at Mikey Rush's pit area and da-da-da-da-da. It's like, dude, it's not even worth talking to him about that story because he isn't even listening. It's just like going in one ear and out the other. And if you were to stop in the middle of the conversation and look at him and go, hey, man, what did I just say? He would look at you like, he isn't even, are you talking to me? You know what I mean? Like, that's the problem that I have is this, I tone everybody out. I've got my 3 or 4 select people in the paddock that I pay attention to, and that's mechanics mainly. And then really from there, it's like, man, sorry, but don't bother me.
No, that's all right. I think it's a lesson for everybody. Like, don't just judge you on what they see at 5 p.m. on a Saturday.
Yeah, and that's, you know, that's the disadvantage. You know, that's when mainly everybody sees me, and that's when everybody mainly judges me. And it's like, you know, I catch some slack for it from here or there, but I apologize to everybody that, you know, ever got the wrong impression of that. That's not my everyday deal, and the people who do know me well enough to know, hey, like, that's not him. But it's different, like different mentality. Bauman's mentality is he's joking, he's having fun, he's seeing his buddy, he's going from this guy's pit area, that guy's pit area, this guy's pit area, and that's cool. You know what I mean? Like, I wish I could do that because, you know, I would probably be, you know, a lot more at ease, I guess you could say. But for me, it's like I get to the races and I'm in my pit area and don't bother me.
Yeah, on the moto side, I'll help the fans here understand. Like, that was Jeff Stanton. They even had a butt patch once that was Mr. Mean, because that's what everybody thought he was like. And then like he retires and he becomes like the coolest guy ever. And he's like, that's the way I was most of the time. But he's like, I couldn't do it on the day of the race. I couldn't be cool the day of the race. And I think everybody gets that. Like, hey, that's just because you want it bad. There's nothing wrong with that. Yeah,
exactly.
Cool. All right, well, this has been a very enlightening hour. I'm glad we all got this time now to do stuff like this.
yeah, man, it's been good, and thanks a lot for everything, and
we'll do more, because that's all we got now is time. We'll see.
Yeah, if you want to do like a legit Skype thing or whatever, then let's do it.
Boom. Yes. As you noticed, that's the end of our interview with Jared Mees here, but we've been doing a lot of Racer X Instagram Live videos. You may or may not be an Instagram person that's watching all of those or not. We're repurposing a lot of that content, though, into some podcasts here, like with Eli Tomac last week, or we're putting them as written transcriptions on the website as well. But Instagram Live is where people want to be, so I'll get Jared Mees on there as well, because we need all the content and analysis and perspective we can while we don't have any racing. So that's our show for this week. Probably going to have more this week alone, because we've got riders coming at us. So easy to get a hold of people when they're not busy with this pesky doing racing stuff. So thanks for supporting us. Go to racerxonline.com, subscribe, keep the lights on here, support our moto journalistic goals and dreams, and also support Yoshimura, both Yoshimura-RD and Yoshimura Cycling. That's our show. Thanks to Jared Mees. Thanks to you. See you in a few days. We'll have more podcasts coming your way. Bye.